The sun hung high in the clear blue sky, casting a warm glow over Riverside Park. Laughter and chatter filled the air as families gathered for picnics, children chased each other on the playground, and joggers passed by with rhythmic determination. Among the vibrant scene was Sarah Mitchell, a compassionate young woman in her late 20s, who had made it a tradition to spend her afternoons at the park with her loyal golden retriever, Max. Max was not just any dog, he was a gentle giant with a heart as big as his appetite for adventure. With his shiny golden coat glistening in the sunlight and his tail wagging like a flag of joy, he embodied the spirit of happiness. Sarah often marveled at how much joy Max brought into her life. He was more than a pet, he was her best friend. As they strolled along the winding paths of the park, Sarah tossed a frisbee into the air. Max bounded after it with uncontainable enthusiasm, his paws kicking up small clouds of dust as he raced across the grass. With each leap and bound, he seemed to defy gravity, embodying pure joy. Sarah laughed, her heart swelling with affection for her furry companion. "Go get it, Max," she cheered, her voice ringing out like music against the backdrop of laughter and chatter. Max caught the frisbee midair and returned it triumphantly to Sarah, dropping it at her feet with a proud bark. She knelt down to scratch behind his ears, feeling a rush of gratitude for their simple yet fulfilling life together. The world felt perfect in that moment, a slice of paradise where worries faded away. After several rounds of frisbee and some playful tug-of-war with Max's favorite rope toy, Sarah decided it was time for a break. They found a shady spot beneath an old oak tree where they could rest and enjoy the gentle breeze rustling through the leaves. As Sarah sat cross-legged on the grass, she pulled out a bottle of water and took a sip while watching Max sniff around curiously. "All right, buddy," she said with a smile. "Let's take 5. But Max had other plans. His nose twitched as he picked up an intriguing scent wafting through the air. With an eager glance back at Sarah, he darted off into the underbrush, tail wagging furiously. "Max, come back," she called out playfully but with a hint of concern. Max paused momentarily at her call but then continued on his exploratory mission, driven by curiosity. Sarah chuckled to herself, shaking her head. "That dog has no sense of boundaries," she muttered affectionately before deciding to follow him. As she wandered deeper into the park's wooded area, she called out for him again. "Max, where are you?" The trees formed a canopy overhead, filtering sunlight into dappled patterns on the ground. The sounds of laughter faded into the background as she ventured further away from the main path. Suddenly, there was silence, an unusual stillness that made Sarah's heart race slightly. She quickened her pace, calling out for Max once more. Just as worry began to creep in, she spotted him ahead, standing still and staring intently at something hidden among the bushes. "Max, what did you find?" she asked, relief flooding through her as she approached him. But as Sarah drew closer, she noticed that Max was not just sniffing around aimlessly, he was fixated on something serious. Her heart sank as she pushed through the branches and peered down to see what had captured his attention. There, nestled among the leaves and twigs, lay an infant, a tiny baby swaddled in a thin blanket, crying softly but desperately. Time seemed to freeze as Sarah's breath caught in her throat. "Oh my God," she whispered in disbelief. Her mind raced with questions. How did this baby end up here? Where were its parents? Max gently nudged the baby with his nose as if trying to comfort it. His instincts kicked in. He knew this little one needed help. "Stay here, Max," Sarah instructed softly but firmly as she knelt beside the baby. She carefully lifted it into her arms, feeling its warmth against her chest. The baby's cries subsided slightly as it sensed her presence. "Don't worry," she murmured soothingly. "I'm going to help you." With Max by her side, his eyes filled with concern, Sarah knew they had to act quickly. She stood up and looked around for someone who could assist them but found only trees and shadows surrounding them. "We need to get you to safety," she said resolutely as she turned back toward the path leading out of the woods. Max trotted beside her, ever vigilant and protective. As they made their way back toward civilization, Sarah's heart raced, not just from fear but also from determination. They would find help for this innocent child who had somehow ended up alone in this vast park. Little did they know that their lives were about to change forever, and that this day would mark the beginning of an extraordinary journey driven by love, courage, and an unbreakable bond between a woman and her dog. As Sarah hurried back toward the main path of Riverside Park, the weight of the baby in her arms felt both surreal and urgent. The soft whimpers had subsided into quiet sniffles, and she could feel the warmth radiating from the infant's small body. Max trotted beside her, glancing up occasionally as if to reassure her that they were on the right path. "Just a little further," Sarah whispered, her heart pounding in her chest. She could see the playground in the distance, where children were laughing and parents were chatting. But as she approached, she felt a wave of anxiety wash over her. What would she say? How would she explain this? As they emerged from the wooded area, Sarah spotted a group of families gathered near a picnic table. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what lay ahead. "Max, stay close," she instructed as they approached the nearest family, a mother with 2 young children who were playing with a frisbee. "Excuse me," Sarah called out, her voice slightly shaky. The mother turned, her expression shifting from joy to concern as she noticed the baby in Sarah's arms. "What happened?" the woman asked, rushing over with wide eyes. "Is that baby okay?" I found him in the bushes back there," Sarah stammered, her voice trembling as she gestured toward the trees. "He was all alone." The mother's face paled as she reached out to take a closer look at the baby. "Oh my God, where are his parents?" she exclaimed, glancing around anxiously. "I don't know," Sarah replied, feeling panic rising within her. "I just found him. We need to call someone, maybe the police." Before anyone could respond, Max barked sharply, drawing attention to himself. He seemed agitated, pacing back and forth as if he understood the gravity of the situation. Sarah knelt down beside him, stroking his fur to calm him. "Let me call 911, the mother said urgently, pulling out her phone. As she dialed, other park goers began to gather around them, drawn by the commotion. "Is that a baby?" one man asked incredulously. "What's going on?" "I found him alone in the park," Sarah explained quickly, holding the baby closer to her chest as if to shield him from any further distress. "We need help." Within moments, the mother was speaking to a dispatcher on the phone while others looked on with concern and curiosity. Sarah felt a mix of relief and dread. Help was on the way, but what would happen next? As they waited for assistance, Sarah cradled the baby gently and began to hum a soft lullaby, something her own mother used to sing to her when she was little. To her surprise, it seemed to soothe the infant, his tiny eyelids fluttered as he settled against her shoulder. "Hang in there," she whispered softly, feeling an overwhelming sense of protectiveness wash over her. She couldn't shake off the feeling that this child had been through something unimaginable. Moments later, sirens pierced through the air as a police car pulled up near the playground. Officer Jake Thompson stepped out, a tall man with a kind face and an air of authority that immediately commanded respect. He scanned the scene quickly before striding over to where Sarah stood. "What's going on here?" he asked as he approached them. "This woman found a baby abandoned in the bushes," someone from the crowd explained urgently. Officer Thompson's expression shifted from curiosity to concern as he focused on Sarah and the baby in her arms. "Is he okay?" he asked gently. "I think so," Sarah replied, trying to keep her voice steady despite feeling overwhelmed. "He was crying when I found him but seems calmer now." "Let me take a look," Officer Thompson said softly as he reached out his hands for the baby. With great care, Sarah handed over the infant while Max stood protectively at her side, watching closely. The officer examined the baby's condition, checking for any signs of distress or injury, before nodding reassuringly. "He looks healthy but needs immediate care," he said firmly but kindly. "We'll get him checked out." As Officer Thompson spoke into his radio for backup and medical assistance, Sarah felt tears prick at her eyes. She couldn't fathom how someone could leave such a precious life behind. "Do you have any idea how long he's been here?" Officer Thompson asked while gently cradling the baby. "No," Sarah admitted shakily. I don't understand how this could happen." The officer nodded solemnly as he listened intently to her words. "We'll do everything we can to find out what happened," he assured her before turning his attention back to coordinating with dispatch. As they waited for medical personnel to arrive, more officers joined them at Riverside Park, each one assessing the situation with professionalism and compassion. Max remained close by Sarah's side, occasionally looking up at her with his big brown eyes as if sensing her distress. Time seemed to stretch endlessly until finally an ambulance pulled up beside them with flashing lights and sirens muted now that they had arrived at their destination. Paramedics jumped out and rushed over with equipment ready to assess and care for the infant. Sarah watched anxiously as they examined him further before gently placing him in a portable bassinet designed for emergencies. She felt an overwhelming sense of relief wash over her. At least now he would be safe. "Thank you for your quick thinking," one of the paramedics said kindly as they worked efficiently around them. As Officer Thompson continued gathering information from witnesses and coordinating next steps with his team, Sarah felt a wave of gratitude toward Max for leading her to this moment, the moment where they had saved an innocent life together. But beneath that gratitude lay an unsettling question: who had left this baby alone? And what would happen next? As she glanced down at Max, her loyal companion who had become an unlikely hero, she knew their journey was far from over. Max stood by Sarah's side, his golden fur glistening in the afternoon sun as he watched the paramedics work with swift efficiency. The baby, now secured in a portable bassinet, was being gently monitored, and Sarah felt a wave of relief wash over her. Yet, beneath that relief lingered an unsettling tension: who would abandon such a precious life? As the paramedics prepared to transport the baby to the hospital for further evaluation, Officer Jake Thompson approached Sarah. His expression was serious but compassionate, reflecting the weight of the situation. "Thank you for your bravery," he said, kneeling down to meet her gaze. "You acted quickly and saved that child's life. I couldn't leave him there," Sarah replied, her voice trembling slightly. "I can't believe someone would do this." Officer Thompson nodded solemnly. "It's hard to understand. We'll do everything we can to find out what happened and ensure the baby is safe." As the ambulance doors closed and the vehicle pulled away with its sirens blaring, Sarah felt a mixture of emotions swirling within her: relief, anger, and an overwhelming desire to help further. She glanced down at Max, who seemed to sense her turmoil. He nudged her hand gently with his nose, offering silent comfort. "Thanks, buddy," she said softly, scratching behind his ears. "I don't know what I'd do without you." With the initial chaos subsiding, Officer Thompson began gathering statements from witnesses. Sarah watched as he spoke with various park-goers who had witnessed her discovery of the baby. Each story added another layer to the mystery surrounding the child's abandonment. As she stood there with Max, she couldn't shake off the feeling that they needed to do more. The baby was safe for now, but what about tomorrow? What if he didn't have anyone to care for him? The thought gnawed at her heart. "Excuse me," Sarah said suddenly, stepping forward to catch Officer Thompson's attention as he finished speaking with a couple nearby. "Is there anything we can do? I mean, what happens now?" Officer Thompson regarded her thoughtfully. "The baby will be taken to the hospital for a thorough checkup. After that, Child Protective Services will likely get involved to ensure he has a safe place to stay." Can I visit him?" Sarah asked hesitantly, her heart racing at the thought of being involved further. He paused for a moment before responding. "I can't make any promises right now, but if you want to help in any way, I suggest you contact Child Protective Services once they're involved. They'll be able to guide you on how you can assist." Sarah nodded, determination filling her heart. She would find a way to help this child. She couldn't just walk away after everything that had happened. As Officer Thompson continued his work, Max suddenly perked up, his ears twitching as he caught a scent on the breeze. He turned and began trotting away from Sarah toward a nearby path leading deeper into the park. "Max, where are you going?" she called out, following him instinctively. Max led her down a winding trail lined with trees and bushes until they reached a secluded area where the sounds of laughter and joy faded into silence. As they ventured further in, Max stopped abruptly and sniffed at something on the ground, a small piece of fabric caught on a thorny bush. "What is it, boy?" Sarah asked as she crouched down beside him. She recognized the fabric immediately. It was part of a baby blanket, a soft blue material that looked eerily similar to what the infant had been wrapped in. Her heart raced as she picked up the fabric carefully. "This must be from him," she murmured in disbelief. "But how did it get here?" Max continued sniffing around the area while Sarah examined the blanket more closely. It was frayed at one edge and had dirt smudges on it, signs that it had been discarded carelessly. Suddenly, a thought struck her. Could this be a clue? Perhaps it could lead them to answers about who had left the baby behind. "Come on, Max," she said resolutely as she stood up again. "Let's see if we can find anything else." With Max leading the way once more, they explored further into the wooded area. The park felt different now. Once filled with laughter and lightness, it now held an air of mystery and urgency as they searched for answers. As they walked along the path, Sarah's mind raced with possibilities. Who would abandon an innocent child? Was there something more sinister at play? She felt a surge of determination. She needed to uncover the truth, not just for herself but for that vulnerable little life who deserved so much more. After several minutes of searching through bushes and undergrowth without finding anything else significant, they reached a small clearing where sunlight streamed through the trees like golden rays illuminating their path. "Maybe we should head back," Sarah suggested reluctantly as she glanced around at their surroundings. Max looked up at her quizzically but seemed willing to follow her lead. Just then, Sarah spotted something glimmering near a tree trunk, a small metallic object partially buried in leaves and dirt. Curiosity piqued. She approached cautiously and knelt down to examine it more closely. It was a silver locket, a delicate piece of jewelry that looked like it had been lost recently. She brushed off some dirt and opened it carefully. Inside were two tiny photographs, one of a woman with dark hair smiling brightly and another of a young child who bore an uncanny resemblance to the baby they had found. Her heart raced as she realized this could be another clue, a connection between the baby and someone who cared for him or perhaps someone who had been searching for him. "Max, look at this," she exclaimed excitedly as she held up the locket for him to see. Max sniffed at it curiously before looking back up at Sarah with his big brown eyes full of understanding, as if he knew they were onto something important. "We need to take this back," Sarah said decisively as she carefully placed the locket in her pocket alongside the piece of fabric from earlier. "This might help find out who he belongs to." With renewed determination coursing through her veins, Sarah turned back toward where they had come from, her heart set on uncovering not just answers but also justice for that innocent child left alone in Riverside Park. Together with Max by her side, their bond stronger than ever, they were determined to unravel this mystery and bring hope back into a life that so desperately needed it. As Sarah and Max made their way back to the main path of Riverside Park, her heart raced with a mix of hope and anxiety. The silver locket and the piece of fabric were tangible clues that might lead them to answers about the baby's identity and his past. She clutched the locket tightly in her pocket, feeling its cool metal against her palm, a reminder of the urgency of their mission. Once they reached the park's entrance, Sarah spotted Officer Jake Thompson speaking with another officer near the police car. He was reviewing notes on a clipboard, his brow furrowed in concentration. She approached him, Max trotting faithfully beside her. "Officer Thompson," she called out, her voice tinged with urgency. He looked up, his expression shifting from focused to attentive as he recognized her. "Sarah, I'm glad to see you back. I was just about to check in on you," he said, stepping closer. "I found something," she said breathlessly, pulling out the silver locket from her pocket and holding it out for him to see. "I think it might belong to the baby." Officer Thompson took the locket from her hands and examined it closely. "This is definitely significant," he said, turning it over in his palm. "Do you mind if I keep this for now? It could help us identify the child's family." "Of course," Sarah replied, feeling a surge of determination. "I just want to help him." "Your instincts have been spot on so far," he said with a nod of appreciation. "We'll get this to our evidence team right away." As Officer Thompson turned to speak with another officer about the locket, Sarah felt a sense of purpose wash over her. She wasn't just a bystander, she was an active participant in this unfolding story. Max sensed her excitement and wagged his tail, nudging her hand with his nose. "Good boy," she said, bending down to give him a reassuring scratch behind the ears. "We're making progress." Just then, a police cruiser pulled up alongside them, and two more officers stepped out, one of them a woman with sharp features and an air of authority that commanded respect. She introduced herself as Officer Lisa Ramirez. "Jake," she said, glancing at Sarah with curiosity. "What do we have here?" "This is Sarah Mitchell," Officer Thompson explained. "She found the baby abandoned in the park and has been instrumental in gathering evidence." Officer Ramirez raised an eyebrow, impressed. "Nice work, Sarah. We could use more citizens like you." Thank you, Sarah replied, feeling a swell of pride at being recognized for her efforts. As they spoke, another officer approached carrying a small folder filled with papers. We've got some preliminary information on the baby, he said to Officer Thompson. No missing persons reports match his description yet. Sarah's heart sank at that news. She had hoped that someone would be searching for him. Let's get him checked out at the hospital first, Officer Thompson said decisively. Then we'll start canvassing the area for anyone who might know something. What can I do to help? Sarah asked eagerly. She felt a strong urge to stay involved, to ensure that this baby would not be forgotten. We'll need your contact information, Officer Ramirez said as she took out a notepad. If we find anything related to the baby or if someone comes forward claiming to know him, we'll reach out. Sarah quickly provided her phone number and email address while Max sat patiently by her side, sensing the gravity of the situation. Thank you for your help today, Officer Thompson said sincerely as he finished jotting down notes. Your quick thinking has made a difference. As they wrapped up their conversation, Sarah felt a sense of camaraderie forming between them, a shared commitment to uncovering the truth behind this heartbreaking situation. Can I come to the hospital? She asked hesitantly. I just want to make sure he's okay. Officer Thompson exchanged glances with Officer Ramirez before nodding thoughtfully. I don't see why not, he replied after a moment. But remember that hospital staff will have protocols in place regarding visitors. I understand, Sarah said eagerly, her heart racing at the thought of seeing the baby again. With that decided, they all climbed into their respective vehicles, Officer Thompson and Officer Ramirez in one police cruiser while Sarah drove her own car behind them, Max sitting happily in the passenger seat with his head out the window, enjoying the wind ruffling through his fur. The drive to Riverside General Hospital felt like an eternity as Sarah's mind raced with thoughts about what might happen next. Would they be able to find out who had left the baby? Would someone come forward claiming him as their own? When they arrived at the hospital, Sarah parked quickly and rushed inside alongside Max and Officer Thompson. The sterile smell of antiseptic filled the air as they approached the reception desk. Excuse me, Officer Thompson said politely to the receptionist. We're here about an abandoned infant brought in earlier today. The receptionist nodded knowingly and directed them toward pediatric care where they would find more information about the baby's condition. As they entered the pediatric wing, Sarah's heart raced with anticipation and concern. The walls were painted cheerful colors, bright yellow and soft blue, but it did little to ease her anxiety as they made their way down the corridor toward a small waiting area designated for families. Inside one of the rooms, she caught sight of a small bassinet where nurses were gently tending to a tiny figure wrapped in blankets, the same baby she had found just hours ago. Is that him? She whispered to Officer Thompson as they approached cautiously. Yes, he replied softly, watching intently as one of the nurses checked vital signs while another prepared supplies for further examination. Sarah felt tears welling up in her eyes as she gazed at the infant, so innocent and vulnerable yet surrounded by caring professionals who were determined to ensure his safety. Max stood beside her quietly but alertly, his presence offering comfort amid uncertainty. As they waited for updates from medical staff, Sarah couldn't shake off an overwhelming sense of responsibility. This child had already touched her heart deeply in such a short time, and she was determined not only to find answers but also to advocate for him until he was safe again. Little did she know that their journey was only beginning, and that together with Max by her side, they would uncover truths that would change everything for both them and this precious child left alone in Riverside Park. The sterile scent of antiseptic filled the air as Sarah stood just outside the small room where the baby lay, her heart racing with a mix of hope and anxiety. Officer Thompson stood beside her, his expression serious as they waited for the medical staff to provide updates on the infant's condition. Max remained at Sarah's side, his golden fur contrasting against the stark white walls of the hospital. After what felt like an eternity, a nurse emerged from the room, her demeanor calm yet focused. She approached them with a warm smile that immediately put Sarah at ease. Hi there. You must be the ones who found little Noah, she said, glancing down at Max. And this handsome fellow must be your loyal companion. Noah, Sarah echoed, her heart swelling at the name. Is that his name? Yes, the nurse confirmed, looking pleased. We've checked him over thoroughly. He's healthy and stable, just a bit dehydrated and in need of some nourishment. We're giving him fluids and will monitor him closely. Thank you, Sarah breathed, relief washing over her. I'm so glad to hear that. The nurse nodded. He'll need some time to recover, but he's in good hands here. If you'd like to see him, we can arrange that shortly. Yes, I would love to, Sarah replied eagerly, glancing down at Max, who seemed to sense her excitement. Just a moment, the nurse said before stepping back into the room. As they waited, Officer Thompson turned to Sarah. You mentioned finding that locket earlier. Have you had a chance to think about it? It could be crucial in identifying No's family. I have, Sarah replied, pulling out the locket from her pocket once more. There were 2 pictures inside, one of a woman and one of a child who looks just like him. She handed it to Officer Thompson for inspection. Let's see if we can find out who these people are, he said thoughtfully as he examined the locket closely. I'll have our forensics team look into it right away. Just then, the nurse returned with a gentle smile. You can come in now if you'd like, she said warmly. With a nod from Officer Thompson, they stepped into the room together. The sight of Noah lying peacefully in his bassinet tugged at Sarah's heartstrings. He looked so small and fragile, wrapped snugly in soft blankets that contrasted with his tiny features. Hey there, little guy, she whispered softly as she approached the bassinet. Max followed closely behind her, his tail wagging gently as he took in the new surroundings. As Sarah leaned closer, Noah stirred slightly, his eyes fluttering open to reveal bright blue orbs that sparkled with innocence. A wave of emotion washed over her. She felt an unexplainable connection to this child, a bond forged through their shared experience. Look at you, she cooed softly, reaching out to gently touch his tiny hand with her fingertip. He grasped her finger instinctively, and her heart melted at the warmth of his tiny grip. Officer Thompson observed quietly from a distance, allowing Sarah this precious moment with Noah while he took notes on his phone regarding their findings so far. Do you think someone is looking for him? Sarah asked suddenly, glancing up at Officer Thompson with concern etched on her face. It's hard to say, he replied thoughtfully. We've had no reports matching his description so far. But we'll keep searching until we find answers. As they spent time with Noah, Sarah felt an overwhelming sense of purpose solidifying within her. She couldn't just stand by. She needed to take action, not just for Noah but also for herself. Officer Thompson, she said suddenly, determination filling her voice. I want to help find out who left him here and why. He looked at her with respect and understanding. I appreciate your passion for this case, but it's important to let us handle the investigation. I understand, she replied quickly but firmly. But I can't just sit here and wait for someone else to do it. I want to help however I can. Officer Thompson considered her words carefully before nodding slowly. All right then, if you're serious about this, we can keep you updated on any developments related to No's case. Just remember that safety is our priority, yours and his. I promise I'll stay safe, she assured him earnestly. As they continued discussing potential leads and next steps regarding No's situation, a thought crossed Sarah's mind. What if there was more she could do? What if she could use social media or community outreach to spread awareness about Noah? Is there any way we could share his story? She asked hesitantly but hopefully. Maybe post something online. It might reach someone who knows him or has been looking for him. Officer Thompson nodded thoughtfully again. That could be beneficial, especially if we include a description and any identifying features. Great, I can help create a poster flyer, Sarah suggested excitedly. Before they could finalize their plans, another nurse entered the room carrying supplies for No's care. She greeted them warmly and began checking on him while explaining what they were doing. As she worked diligently around them, Max remained alert yet calm by Sarah's side, a steady presence amid uncertainty. After a few moments, Officer Thompson received a call on his radio that pulled him away briefly from their conversation. He stepped outside the room while Sarah remained focused on Noah, her heart swelling with hope as she watched him settle back into a peaceful slumber. A few minutes later, Officer Thompson returned with renewed energy in his eyes. We've got some leads on that locket. The woman in the photograph is known locally. Her name is Emily Sanders. Sarah's heart raced at this news. They were finally getting closer to uncovering No's story. She has been reported missing along with her child, Officer Thompson continued gravely. We're going to reach out to see if there's any connection between them and this baby. What about the other child in the locket? Sarah asked eagerly. We'll look into it, he replied confidently. But this is promising news. As they discussed their next steps further, how best to reach out to Emily Sanders and what information they needed, Sarah couldn't help but feel an overwhelming sense of purpose coursing through her. Together with Max by her side and Officer Thompson leading the charge, they were determined not only to uncover the truth behind Noah's abandonment but also ensure that he would find safety and love once again. Little did they know that their journey was about to take unexpected turns, and that every step forward would bring them closer not only to answers but also deeper connections forged through compassion and resilience in their quest for justice for an innocent child left alone in Riverside Park. The atmosphere in Riverside General Hospital was a mix of anticipation and urgency as Sarah, Officer Thompson, and Max waited for updates on Noah's situation. After the promising lead about Emily Sanders, the woman in the locket, they were eager to learn more. Sarah felt a sense of responsibility for Noah, and she was determined to see this through to the end. Do you think we'll hear from her soon? Sarah asked, glancing at Officer Thompson as they sat in the small waiting area outside Noah's room. I hope so, he replied, checking his watch. I've reached out to the local precinct where Emily was last seen. They're working on tracking her down. Just then, a nurse stepped out of Noah's room with a warm smile. He's doing well. We've given him some fluids. And he's responding nicely. If you'd like, you can spend some more time with him. Thank you, Sarah said eagerly, rising from her seat. She felt a rush of relief wash over her. Noah was safe for now. She turned to Max, who seemed just as excited as she was and followed closely behind her. As they entered the room, Sarah approached the bassinet where Noah lay sleeping peacefully. She gently reached out to touch his tiny hand again, feeling a wave of warmth and connection wash over her. Hey there, little buddy, she whispered softly, her heart swelling with affection. You're going to be okay. Officer Thompson stood back, observing quietly as Sarah interacted with Noah. He admired her dedication and compassion, qualities that would undoubtedly make a difference in this child's life. After spending some time with Noah, Sarah noticed Officer Thompson receiving a call on his radio. He stepped out into the hallway to take it, leaving her alone with the baby and Max. As she watched Noah sleep, her thoughts drifted back to the locket and what it represented. It was more than just an object, it was a lifeline to his past, a connection to someone who might care for him. A few minutes later, Officer Thompson returned with a serious expression on his face. We've located Emily Sanders, he said firmly. She's been found safe but is currently being questioned about her disappearance and the circumstances surrounding Noah. Is she okay? Sarah asked anxiously. Yes, he replied, but we need to understand what happened before we can make any decisions regarding Noah's future. Sarah nodded, feeling a mix of relief and apprehension. She wanted to believe that Emily would want her child back but also feared what might have led to his abandonment in the first place. Can I go see her? Sarah asked impulsively, feeling a strong urge to connect with Emily and understand her story. Officer Thompson hesitated for a moment but then nodded. I think that could be beneficial, especially if you can provide support for her during this difficult time. With that decision made, they headed toward the area where Emily was being held for questioning. As they walked through the hospital corridors, Sarah felt a knot of anxiety tighten in her stomach. She didn't know what to expect or how Emily would react. When they reached the small room where Emily was sitting, Sarah took a deep breath before entering. The woman looked up at them with tired eyes, her hair disheveled and face pale, but there was an undeniable warmth in her gaze when she saw Noah's locket in Officer Thompson's hand. As that, Emily began tremulously, her voice barely above a whisper. Yes, Officer Thompson replied gently as he stepped forward. This belongs to your son. Emily's eyes filled with tears as she reached out toward the locket. Noah, my baby. She broke down sobbing as emotions poured forth, relief mixed with sorrow and guilt. Sarah felt an overwhelming surge of empathy for this woman who had been through so much. Emily, she said softly, stepping closer. I'm so sorry for everything you've been through. I found Noah in the park. I just wanted to help him. Emily looked up at Sarah through tear-filled eyes. Thank you, she whispered brokenly. I thought I lost him forever. As they spoke, Officer Thompson remained nearby, observing carefully but allowing this moment of connection between two mothers who shared an unbreakable bond over their love for Noah. "I want to help you," Sarah continued gently, feeling compelled to offer support in any way she could. "What happened? Why were you gone?" Emily took a shaky breath as she composed herself enough to explain. "I was struggling. I didn't know how to take care of him anymore," she admitted through tears. "I thought I could find help but ended up lost, scared." Her words struck a chord within Sarah. She understood how overwhelming parenthood could be, even under normal circumstances, and realized that sometimes people made desperate choices when faced with insurmountable challenges. "Please don't worry," Sarah said softly but firmly. "You're not alone anymore. We can figure this out together." Officer Thompson listened intently as Emily shared more about her struggles, how she had felt isolated and overwhelmed by circumstances beyond her control, and how that had led to her abandoning Noah in a moment of desperation. As their conversation unfolded, it became clear that Emily needed support, not just from law enforcement but also from compassionate individuals willing to help guide her back toward stability. After several emotional exchanges filled with tears and heartfelt promises, Officer Thompson stepped forward once more. "Emily," he said gently but firmly, "we need to ensure that Noah is safe moving forward while we work on getting you the help you need." Emily nodded solemnly as reality set in. She understood that there would be consequences for her actions but also recognized that this was an opportunity for redemption, for herself and for Noah. As they wrapped up their conversation, Officer Thompson assured Emily that Child Protective Services would be involved moving forward, working alongside social workers who could provide resources and support tailored specifically for her needs. With heavy hearts yet renewed hope filling the air around them, the three of them stood united by their shared commitment to ensuring that Noah would never feel abandoned again. As they left the room together, Sarah walking beside Max while glancing back at Emily one last time, she felt an overwhelming sense of purpose solidifying within her heart. Not only had they uncovered vital truths about Noah's past but also forged connections that would help pave the way toward healing for all involved. Little did they know that their journey had only just begun, and that together they would navigate challenges ahead, finding strength in each other while ensuring justice served not only for an innocent child left alone in Riverside Park but also for a mother seeking redemption amidst chaos.